Good day. Greetings of peace and love to everyone out there. I get the emails, I get all the inquiries. It's hard to respond back to everything. However, I've been getting a lot of inquiries lately about just my views on sovereignty again. And periodically, I have to talk about this because, like when you teach in the spiritual communities or whatever, I've made it a point to kind of try to make myself at least knowledgeable about a little bit of everything that is going down in the spiritual community, no matter whether it's your natal chart, or it could be having knowledge on numerology, or just having knowledge on your human design chart, because a lot of people are into that human design type of information. So try to make it a point to just touch on a little bit of everything because it's all relevant, to astrology. Of course, me being a Leo myself, sovereignty is like one of my favorite topics to kind of study and somewhat, conversate on. It's a topic that a lot of us don't fully understand. I don't even fully understand it, but it's a topic that I'm definitely growing and learning to understand. But lately, I've been hearing a lot of people, they're saying they want to get out the system, they want to get out the matrix, and they want me to give them some type of information on how to go about doing this. And a lot of people, they want me to email them this information. However, I don't have a lot of time to like shoot the emails out and things of that nature because I'm too busy trying to prepare, for my next video, or prepare for my next book I'm trying to release, or whatever things that I may be working on. So I want to kind of take this time to kind of like address those emails pertaining to this topic of sovereignty. Now, to really understand sovereignty, you have to go back into the history, and that's the kind of the angle I want to approach it from this time. Sometimes I approach sovereignty from a perspective of like business and the legal perspective, but I kind of want to more so go into the historical and spiritual aspect of sovereignty, because I made a video a while back talking about how you have to free your mind if you want to truly be sovereign. Like, spiritual sovereignty is the true, I guess you could say, first version of sovereignty, and that's because we are born on this planet, and just like my man Alex Jones talks about, this is a prison planet. Because the reason why I believe it's a prison planet is because I believe that according to human nature and with the way humans were designed and programmed, you were programmed to be a slave. You look like your maker. You look like your creator, or some people will say your God. You look just like your God. You were created in the image and likeness of your God. However, you have not activated all of your DNA. You have not began to learn how to use that whole 100% aspect of your mind. So most people are locked into like 7%. They only use like 7% of their mind. So that's a form of slavery, and that's why I say that we were created to be this way. Because when you start to research the different stories about how humans got here, no matter if you're talking about Adam and Eve, or if you want to go into understanding the Sumerian aspect of how we got here, no matter how you look at it, we got here based upon being in some form of an experiment or some form of a project. And we were put into, some people say it's an enclosed garden. Other people say that this happened in a cave. It doesn't really matter where this happened. At the end of the day, we were put into some form of a controlled environment once we were created. And we were created by some form of group of beings. No matter if you're reading the Bible or whatever you're reading, they all say this. So this is not something far out. Like, no matter what you believe in, if you believe in anything, you probably believe in a version of this story. The only group of people I believe that probably don't believe in a version of this story is probably like people that are atheists, or people that are just scientists and they're not really into like grasping a solid belief, and they're just like, I don't really know. Agnostics even, an undecided person. They say, well, I don't really know how we were created, so I don't really want to put a belief on that. But for some people that feel like they need something to believe in just to have sanity and have a basis or some type of reference, we all were taught the same story. And it's the same story. It's just been told over and over again amongst different cultures in different ways. It's the greatest story ever told. The story of how you got here, which is key in understanding sovereignty, because if you were created to be a worker or a slave or Abdullah, so which means a slave, or You know, you were created to essentially work in the mines of South Africa. In some stories, they say we were created somewhere in close to Saudi Arabia, and from there we were transported to South Africa once we were mature enough to become workers, to be a Adamu, which some people say means to be a servant of the earth. So you were created to be a servant of the earth according to most texts, no matter where you thought this may have happened at. And that's kind of how we got here. It was based upon different experiments, and there's a lot of history that took place before that. And that's what I want to kind of talk about here, because understanding what took place before that is your key to freeing yourself from the slavery. Because essentially the story that's told about us being created in some form of an enclosed garden and being made to be slaves is a half truth. It's actually kind of a lie, because they're not telling you that you have history that goes back further than that. And the history that goes back further than that goes into the many different experiments that took place before this version of Homo sapiens or human beings. And they talk about this in the Matrix a little bit. Even the people that made the Matrix were into the occult, and they got a lot of, I heard they got a lot of that information from Sophia Stewart. Upon speaking to her on the phone, she told me that most of the Matrix, Sophia Stewart made a book called The Third Eye that you guys should check out. And she talks about how the Matrix and the Terminator movies all came from this book, The Third Eye, that she wrote. And it came from, she was one of the people that they took the source material from, the scripts from, to create the Matrix. So I tend to believe that from reading the book myself. I've read the book myself. However, she talks about how in this book that all of these movies and all this stuff about the future and, you know, all this science and all of this stuff, the basis of all of our movies and our modern day movies and our modern day science goes back to this particular story about the third eye. And a lot of her story about the third eye, to me, she was channeling information from Sumeria. I don't even realize or know if she knew that or not, but she was channeling information straight coming from Sumeria, which is very key here. So I say Sumeria because there's many cultures that have told the story about ETs, but it's really only in Kemet, which was actually a fragment of Atlantis, because Kemet was just like an island or aspect of Atlantis. It's only really in Kemet and Sumeria, as far as in our modern day time, that I believe the story is vividly told to a point where it goes beyond belief and gets into a little bit of science even. And she was channeling information from that. I'm not going to go into what she talked about per se for time's sake, but what I will say is this. I will say that all of the stories are the same, essentially. We're channeling this information from a particular source. And that's what you must first understand. And once you begin to understand this source, you will be able to trace yourself back further than slavery. The reason why everybody wants to be sovereign is because they want to beat slavery. Because slavery is the order of the day on this planet. It always has been since the beginning of human beings and human civilization, and always will be. It always will be. And a sovereign or a master is one that can trace themselves back prior to that, so that they can begin to identify with a portion of land. So in order for you to be a sovereign, you have to find what I would call your motherland. Your motherland. And you also will have to have a network, of which I'll talk about in a second. But you got to find your motherland. So people say, we all come from Africa. We all come from the motherland. That's not necessarily true. There were various different experiments that took place to create different versions of Homo sapiens on this planet. And what you got to remember is that a lot of these experiments took place in a time where the land aspect of the planet was all together as of one island. So when we talk about Atlantis, and they say Atlantis was an island, and everybody said, well, it's an island, and it was somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, or somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, and some earthquake happened, and it fell into the ocean. That was a portion of Atlantis. But you got to remember, when they say that Atlantis was an island, they're speaking of all of the land on the planet. So really, all of this is really called Atlan, or Atlantis. And Atlan means a vacation spot, because this was a vacation spot for extraterrestrials. So when they say Atlantis, they're talking about all the land. I don't care if you in Russia, and I don't care if you somewhere in Mexico, or I don't care if you over in Canada. At the end of the day, you're on the land of Atlantis, and this is the motherland. And on this planet, this was a matriarchal planet prior to male extraterrestrials coming here and enslaving women. And that's very key to understand, because that's how the slavery started. You got to remember, when males first start coming to this planet, the first version of males, because you have alpha males and then you have what some people call beta males. Beta males are males that, from my science and from what I teach, beta males are males that were the byproduct of the experiment. After males came here from extraterrestrial origins and raped women and did all kind of stuff to women, they created what you call beta males, or the sons of God, or like beta males, and the gods were like the alpha males. So these were the males that had mostly extraterrestrial DNA in them, but they were still physical beings. So all that's important to understand when you understand sovereignty, because that's how slavery got on this planet. And the women that freed themselves, these women eventually freed themselves from the slavery of the males. And the women that freed themselves from the slavery of the males they formed a pact and a treaty with the males. And they said that they would participate in the slavery aspect. And it may sound crazy, but you even find it in the experiments. You even find it in the Sumerian text when it talks about Mother Ninti. Mother Ninti is really essentially the motherland. She was the queen, or is the queen, because the Mother Ninti is a title of which I will have to do a whole video on talking about her. But needless to say, Mother Ninti is, when you talk about Mother Earth and Mother Nature and all that, you're really talking about Mother Ninti, according to the Sumerians. And she was responsible for freeing this first class of women and their sons from the slavery of the extraterrestrial males. And if it wasn't for their sons, see, this is where you get the story of Horus and Aset from. That goes back to Atlantis. That actually goes back to Lemuria. Because what happened with Aset was that Osiris, he was an extraterrestrial male that felt sympathy for the females, and he left his order of extraterrestrial males that were like men that was like bosses, and they were like, we ain't finna just marry out of this slave creation, or this slave class of people on this planet. We finna enslave them and control them. Osiris was like, nah, let's try to make them equal and make them like us. See, that's the part of Osiris that they don't talk about. And Osiris, he wanted to make them more like, or bring them up to the level of extraterrestrials and teaching them higher civilization, higher knowledge, and they wasn't for that. So eventually he ruled as a king for a minute, but eventually he was killed. And then when he was killed, that's when his wife, who was a mortal or a homo sapien, she taught her son all the information that she learned about the extraterrestrial civilization. That's how her son was able to break away and break the women free from. And then some men too. When I say the women, I'm talking about the society was more so dominated by women. It was matriarchal. So it was males that came with the breaking away, but these were the Vaderized males, or these were the B males. The A males were like extraterrestrial, alien males. The B males were like, you could say, like kind of like servants or the slaves of these extraterrestrials, but they did break away for a minute. And then that kind of turned into where you have different humans that rule over other humans, and they kind of made a pact with the extraterrestrials and said, yo, we'll be the slave masters, if you will, and we'll rule over humans. And, you know, sometimes when they say we'll rule over them, it doesn't mean that they were whipping. When I say slavery, it doesn't mean like slavery, like servitude slavery, where somebody got a whip and chain. It's like, boy, you better go out there in that field and work, or I'm going to do X, Y, Z to you. That went down. I'm not saying that didn't go down, but that's not essentially what I'm speaking on here. What I'm speaking on here is just a system of service, and how you were put on this planet to be a servant, to work this planet. Even now, like, you have to get up and work and do something every day. So essentially, we all are, even when you think you're free, we're all our servants to something. But it's just a matter of, are you a servant to another human being or another man, or some alien, physical form alien, or are you a slave to your higher self and to the highest good and the highest level of humanity? Are you a slave for that? So that's what it kind of comes down to. So, like, understanding sovereignty, you have to understand this, because you got to be able to trace yourself back to your mother's line. This is why I'm bringing up this story, because it goes back to, it's a lot of it is about the woman. See, like, for a man, you can't really be sovereign unless you have a female. And a female can't be sovereign unless she got a male or a king. So you guys kind of need. See, as a man, you could kind of get away because in chess, you could have you could lose your queen and still essentially win the game, but it's extremely difficult. Only masters can do it unless you're playing somebody that's kind of weak. But like, it's extremely difficult to win a game like once you lose your queen because the queen has so many moves. So essentially, and then the queen, she can. There is no game without the king. So essentially, you guys need each other to make it. However, both parties, whether you're a male or a female, you got to find out about your sovereignty. You have to trace yourself back to your mother's line. So you have what's called mitochondrial DNA, and the mitochondrial DNA, the pattern is so permanent that it can't be infiltrated. Even when you mix with other people, they may have different genes or different ancestors. Whatever your mother's DNA that's dominant in you, it's going to always stay the same. And no matter when you go out and have children, they got to trace themselves back to their mother's line because that mitochondrial DNA holds. So for a woman, she traces herself back to her mother, but so does a male. A male traces himself back to his mother. So when we talk about the feminine principle and things of that nature, that goes into understanding sovereignty. However, you have to be able to trace yourself back. That's why we talk about the feminine principle being the key to shifting the planet and all that type of stuff, is because the more you know about your mother's side of the family, the better off you are to be able to trace yourself back. Now, your father does play a part because you get 23 something chromosomes from the mother, 23 chromosomes from the father. So I'm definitely not saying the patriarchal aspect is important. I'm going to get into that in a minute because that's the network aspect. See, the motherland is the one ingredient that you need to understand sovereignty, which is the motherland. You have to find your land so that you can put your flag down. You need some land to do that with, but then you need a network. And that's where the father comes in at, or the patriarchal aspect comes in at, to be able to network yourself with other groups so that you don't become an island once you become a nation. Because when you say you want to be a sovereign, I mean, there's different levels of sovereignty. You have the patriots or patriarchs, and then you have the kings, and then you have the queens and the so-called royalty and all of that. And there's different tiers and levels to sovereignty. Not to make people feel like they're not equal. It's all based on blood. And that's why they kind of got out of like really rule, like teaching people to operate society off of a monarchy type of system, because a lot of people were jealous and a lot of people were mad because they felt like, well, the royals get everything and the peasants don't get nothing. They got to work hard and the royals don't got to do shit, which was totally not true. But I mean, of course, if you're not in that position, you're going to envy the person that is. Just like in some of those movies, the rich person envies the poor person because the rich person was born into a home where everything was kind of set in stone before they was even thought of, and their parents probably knew what they was going to go to school before they even came out the womb. And then you got this peasant or this person that was born in a poor home that has all of these options and these choices. So everybody is always jealous of the other party. So it's not to really get into that, but it's more so to understand where you came from, your mother's line. So because society and system was set up based upon this whole monarchy thing, which goes back into the mother, and trace yourself back to the mother or the queen. So when understanding that, you got to, once you trace your mitochondrial DNA back, this is what they would do if you were to get some form of a blood test to figure out where you came from. They wouldn't really be able to do it through the Y chromosome or through the father's line. They can only go back so far because the DNA gets diluted and it's hard to decode where you originated from on the matriarch or the male side. But on the matriarchal side, that holds. The mitochondrial DNA holds. That blueprint is written in stone. You can go back thousands of years. They've already traced mitochondrial DNA. They traced us all back to one single female through mitochondrial DNA. This is why I know Mother Ninti is important, because her blood was the blood that she donated her blood for this experiment. So she is the land. So you have to pay homage to that. Many sovereign groups aren't successful because they don't believe in nature and they don't believe in spirituality. They just in it for the money and for becoming a secure party, so they can go get cars and car notes and don't got to pay no money back, and they getting gold and all of this stuff, and and they're going over to these other countries and doing all of this stuff it's all material based. And then one day something happens and they get destroyed. It's because you were in it for the wrong reasons. You can have all the money in the damn world if you understand the concept of it. And the concept of it is spirituality and honoring the planet, really. Because what would make you a sovereign means that you're independent. meaning that you're not independent on, or you're not dependent on outside forces outside of your network to sustain yourself and to exist, but you still need a network or a group of people to be sovereign with. So it's not something that you just go to court and proclaim and send off a bunch of paperwork to a bunch of different organizations, third-party organizations, and you think that's going to help you. You need to come up with a network. Like, once you become spiritual, first you become spiritual first. You get your mind right. You study about astrology, because all this stuff is going to come back up when you start studying deep sovereignty. Like, when you start understanding UCCs and what judges and stuff believe in and teach. You got to remember, judges were a part of the occult, or are a part of the occult. Most judges are like occult wizards. They're like grand wizards. I've taught, shout out to my judges out there. I've sat there and had conversations with them. They know the inner language. Most judges have a deep knowledge of astrology. They done read the Bible through and through, and the Quran through and through. These are very open-minded people. So, and they are considered sovereigns. They don't tell you that, but most judges are considered sovereigns themselves. They're not going to tell you that. So they're secure parties. That's what a sovereign is. And that's going into like the deeper aspects of it, becoming a secure party creditor. And that's what most judges are. And so you got to understand that. But first you got to, in order to even do any of that, you can't have to first know which land do you come from. This is why we have flags. This is why when you go to the UN, you'll look up and you'll see all these flags. And like they said, Malcolm X went to the League of Nations, and they say, I don't know if this happened or not, but they say he couldn't point out his flag. He wanted to become sovereign, but he couldn't point out the flag that his mother's line traced back to, so he was denied sovereignty for his group of people that he was trying to represent at the time. This is a story I heard from some elders. I don't know how true it is or not, but this is what I heard. But I do know it's definitely a fact that you have to be able to trace yourself back to some form of land, which is important. So you talk about the motherland. All of this is the motherland. The whole planet is the motherland. Where is your mother's land? See, that's the secret they've been holding from you. And then once you find out your mother's land, what kind of resources come from your mother's land? And this is going to tie into your blood, and this is going to give you some form of a exclusivity when it comes to your stands or your standings in this society. So that's something you definitely want to understand. Now, the next thing you want to understand is that you have to understand how to network. This is why I firmly believe that you shouldn't become or deem yourself a sovereign unless you have became a part of at least one. And I know I've made a video saying that don't join up with network marketing companies, but you got to understand I'm speaking on the principles here. But you should have at least joined up with one network marketing company and became successful in it before you can sit up here and say that you're ready to become a sovereign, or started your own business of some sort where you had the network with people to make it. So I'm not saying you have to join a network marketing company, but I'm saying if you have never had any experience with networking with people to make it, like if you're not a part of any fraternal orders, a lot of people, that's one thing about the fraternal orders though, they network, they're part of networks, and that's why they're part of various different cliques, and that's why they keep that money coming in, because they have a network of people. So it's easy for fraternal orders and groups like that to kind of like deem their group sovereign. That's what a lot of them do, but they don't tell the people within the group. It's easy for them to do that because they already got a network of people set up. So this is what I would call the Motherland Network. This is the paradigm and the solution that you're going to need. If you ask me, if you want to free yourself, don't worry about, you can keep your driver's license while you're doing all this. Don't worry about your Social Security card and sending that back and you can read up on all of that, but while you're doing this, you need to be forming your network. Like once you figured out your blood, it's 2 steps. It's so simple. And most people don't want to take the steps. They want to email me and tell me, can I help them? And they don't know. I can't do nothing for you to help you if you don't know your grandmother's bloodline, or you can't go talk to your mother and figure out something. You need to go get a test, a professional test, and see what the doctor says. Or what, I don't even know the name of that type of doctor. Excuse my lack of knowledge here, but I don't even know the name of that doctor that takes the blood to find out about your heritage. I can tell you about your star origin. That's about the best I can do in astrology, take you back to that. But this is not about the land here. In order to learn about the land here, you need to go to a professional, someone that's going to take your blood and send it off somewhere to some laboratory, and then you got to hope that they telling you the truth. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to have to just go within your own DNA and go within your own self through meditation and see which group that you think you belong to. You're going to have to go to South America, because most of us, I mean, it's pretty simple. You got to just go to the 7 different continents and figure out which continent you can. It's that simple, because they had 7 different experiments for the 7 different continents. And from those 7 continents, I think altogether there's 13 different bloodlines. There's 13 different bloodlines that took place from those 7 continents. There's like 7 versions of the Negro bloodline, so-called Negro or black bloodline, or melanated bloodline, whatever you want to call it. There's different levels of melanin. Then there's 3 different versions of the Oriental bloodline. And then there's 2 different versions of the Caucasian bloodline. And then there's like another, basically a 13th bloodline, which is like compromising, or that comprises all the different bloodlines together. So that's what you kind of got to research to figure out, like, where do you fall at within those different experiments. So that's the first one. So then now you got the motherland part. Okay, you know, for the most part, you probably came from the continent. You trace yourself back to Africa, or some people may trace themselves back to more than one continent. That's fine. That's fine, because it's up to you to choose. You got to try to get as close as possible. You could just choose a flag. As long as it's on that portion of land, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. So you might not really know which part of Asia you come from, but you know you come from somewhere close to Tibet, maybe between Tibet and China somewhere. And you got to figure out exactly which country you came from or whatever. So you may have to just choose the country you resonate with the most. Because they can't speak, because can't nobody tell you what you are, unless they're your forefathers. That's the only people that can tell you what you are or aren't. So unless one of your forefathers come out and say, yo, you not no Tibetan, you supposed to be tracing yourself back to somewhere else over there. You're not from Tibet. You're supposed to be tracing yourself back to India. You're an Indian. You're East Indian. Then if you don't have any ancestors to tell you that, then you could claim rights over that based upon your blood being the same blood as those group of people that walk over there. If you went to a doctor and you got a blood test done and they told you that you trace yourself back to that particular land, like say for instance Asia, or say for instance Africa, then you could choose a country within that land to represent for now. Because most Africans, there's 7 different versions of Negroes, so-called Negroes, but I mean, at the end of the day, all the experiments started in the Middle East and somewhere around Egypt. So, I mean, I'm not telling you to go say you're Egyptian, because there's a lot of other different nations that you may resonate with more, but I'm just saying, if you said that, you wouldn't be lying. That's where I'm getting at. So you got that on lock. Then the next thing is, like I said, just networking, man. Like learning about business and taking a good marketing course, and taking a good communications course, and taking a good human relations course, so you can learn how to deal with people. These are the next things that you're going to have to do to kind of like free yourself and become independent. So you got to create a network. And it's about knowing the history, knowing the knowledge about where you came from, so that you can know where you're going. Because, like, what's your network going to be composed of? If you notice, some nations are known for their apples. Other nations are known for having oil and different resources like that. You got other nations that are known for labor, because it's just a shitload of people over there, so they can produce things fast because they're like ants. Other nations are very intelligent. They may not have a lot of resources, but they're known for their knowledge and knowing how to put things together, and they're known for their contacts. They may be a nation of diplomats. So like that's what, based on what your nation is about, this is how you kind of like form your blueprint on how you're going to kind of form your network marketing company. Essentially what it's going to be. It's going to be based on what your people are known for. And a lot of people, you got to see, if you notice now, you got to do a lot of homework on yourself. It ain't about just going to get some documents, filling them out, and sending them off, and you think you're good. Now you got to do some homework to really know who you are. Then once you do all of that, then you may implement or employ certain documents to benefit you once you figured that out. Then you may go, okay, say like, well, I'm going to go ahead and send back my Social Security, or not necessarily send back your Social Security card, but I may go send my driver's license back now because I know I don't really need one because of X, Y, and Z, because I know this is the position that I hold within my network that I've set up. So this stuff is deep. I mean, there's even a book that you guys can read and get. It's called the Motherland Network. Really good book. I've read that book. And to me, it's just really a sovereign nation that gets into a war. That's what it's about. But they had a network. It's called the Motherland Network because their network was independent of the laws of the land here. It was a totally independent network. You guys got it's actually a sci-fi book written by some guys over in London, I believe. Really good book. So the guys can check that out. But yeah, man, at the end of the day, it's just about being able to trace yourself back, figuring out what's going on with your mother. Those of you that are lucky enough to have a mother, talk to her now and find out as much as you can. If she don't know, find out as much as you can to try to take her back, as far as back in her mind that she can go. If she can only go back as far as Kentucky, then you from Kentucky then. Kentucky's a nation. That's right, the states are even nations. Each state, there's different regions in the United States of America. And the U.S. is really just another separate creation or corporation that's owned by some people somewhere else. The U.S., that's a whole nother separate. Each state is technically considered a republic or some form of an independent nation, and that's common civic knowledge. You can go take a class on civics to figure that out. So if you can't figure out nothing else, then trace yourself back to your state. That's right, you can do that. Find out your state's flag, and that's your flag for right now. And get your UCC book for that state. So you got to do the knowledge and do the math to really figure this thing out. I just figured I would drop a few jewels on my knowledge on the topic. Shout out to the people that sent me the email. Shout out to Sister Love. Shout out to Brother Ron. And to all of the people out there that, inspired this video. Just want to definitely send a shout out to you. And I thank you guys for listening. I thank you guys for watching, and I wish you freedom and independence. Free your mind. Believe that you can be free, and your ass will follow, and your body will follow, as they say. So with that, much love and light, and namaste to the family. Hotep.